The Farewell, written and directed by Lulu Wang, stars Shuzhen Zhao and Awkwafina. And I do want to start with Awkwafina herself. My first encounter with her was Crazy Rich Asians. I saw the cast list before the movie and I thought to myself, what a ridiculous stage name. I mean, why don't you just use your own name? Because it sounds stupid. I was really put off by that name, and by extension, I thought she'd surely be annoying in the film. Well, that was admittedly silly of me, especially as it quickly turned out that Awkwafina was the best element of that film. She was very funny and she stole every scene she was in. Then I saw her again in bit pieces in Ocean's 8 and Jumanji: The Next Level, and again, in both movies, she was the standout performer and stole every single scene. So I admit, my initial prejudice was a huge mistake. I've now turned around and I love seeing her on the screen. I think she has a great presence. However, all three of those roles that I've seen had something in common, which is that they were purely comedic. So while I was already on board of the Awkwafina hype train as a comedy actress, there was that open question. Is this the only thing that she can do? Well, to answer that question, you just have to watch The Farewell. She's one of the two leads in it, and while the role still has strong comedic undertones and the movie as a whole is that mix of drama and comedy, she herself does display an incredible delicacy and seriousness in her performance. So she plays Billy, a 30-year-old Chinese-American, daughter of longtime expats. They all left China for New York back when Billy was a child, and so by now she's definitely more American than Chinese. Her grandma, who everyone calls Nene and who regularly keeps in touch with Billy, suddenly gets diagnosed with a terminal cancer. Now, here's the twist. She doesn't know that herself. Her sister, who is informed of this by the doctor, doesn't tell her. She tells her that everything is fine, the results of the tests were okay. She tells the entire family the truth, but not Nene herself. And that has to do with a Chinese belief that it's not cancer that kills you necessarily, it's more the fear of impending death. So everyone is rather that grandma lives out her remaining 3 months in peace and happiness without knowing what's coming. However, the family obviously want to say goodbye to grandma, so they decide to throw a massive wedding party for the young cousin and his Japanese girlfriend. The wedding would take place in grandma's hometown, and so everyone now has a fake reason to come there and in actuality spend time with the family matron. Billy is initially advised not to go. Everyone says she's too visibly emotional and can't hide her feelings too well, so they don't want her to make grandma realize that what's going on. But she does end up going anyway. So first things first, for everyone saying that this plot setup sounds absolutely ridiculous, one, it's apparently a rather standard thing in China in Chinese culture to lie like that, and two, the entire story is based on Lulu Wang's own grandma and own family. The illness, the wedding, it's all based on reality. In fact, I read that while the movie was already being made, the grandma was still alive, and so the family had to lie to her about the topic of the movie itself as well. But then, they thought that she would surely die before the film was finished because that was the prognosis. Well, she actually ended up outliving this prognosis by a lot, and the film went out even in China, and that's how she found out she's sick. She's sick in the first place, by watching the film about herself, which is pretty wild and funny if you ask me. Back to the film though. So it's this story that's primarily about the relationship between these two central characters, Billy and Nene, and also using that relationship and the background of all the Chinese traditions to comment on emigration, on being an expat that moved and was essentially uprooted and raised in a different culture altogether, and what that means for your personal identity. How there's that clash where you're confronted with these traditions and customs that everybody around you thinks they should be yours, they should be your heritage, but they're not really. They're foreign and weird and incomprehensible sometimes, and sometimes downright funny. I think the movie manages to weave a lot of humor into the narrative, often poking fun at the Chinese traditions from the point of view of that very particular person, who is technically not a complete outsider, but for all intents and purposes might as well be one. That's mainly highlighted by the contrast between Billy and Nene. The former is sort of on the side of all that's going on, feeling out of place visibly, while Nene thrives in the family chaos around her. She enjoys being in the center of attention. She enjoys organizing stuff, commanding everyone, and just taking charge to do things the way that she thinks should be done. But despite that seemingly impossible clash of characters, they don't really come in direct conflict with one another. The ideologies maybe, but the characters don't, because there's a lot of genuine, subtle love between the two, and apart from that identity crisis, a large part of the story focuses on that relationship that they have. It's very personal and delicate, I'd say, and the way the film is shot also complements that. There's a series of scenes, especially in the middle part, where I think they're taking photos of the young couple that's about to be married. They're at this professional photo shoot, but the entire time they're in there, the wedding couple is in the background of the shots, while in front we have Billy and Nene just spending time together and having various conversations. I thought that was a nice way of, visually highlighting what's going on in the story. Which part is really the foundation of it, which one is more important and which one is the background. I think both lead performances are great. I probably like Awkwafina more because she had to do a more nuanced performance, show a lot of restraint and be subdued for a lot of time, which, knowing her comedic presence and that explosive energy that she usually brings to her roles, wasn't something standard for her. But she manages to do a magnificent job. I believed her character all the time, throughout the entire film. I also want to say that despite all that praise I'm saying, it's not a movie for everyone. It's a slow and calm family dramedy where not a lot of stuff happens really, and also because the majority of the spoken language is Chinese. I think it will be a bit more difficult for someone like me to fully relate to the characters. I know it was for me specifically. It's not just the language barrier, but with language also comes a slightly different set of sensibilities when it comes to cinema and acting, and the way you speak, the way you move, the way you behave, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of that cultural baggage which for me was completely foreign. So that there is definitely that element of foreignness. You kind of have to keep an open mind and buy into it, which I'm sure is not something everybody is capable of doing. And I also wouldn't say, even with that open mind and with how much I liked it, I wouldn't say it's perfect as it is. I think there are things I would change or do differently. I thought the ending was a bit awkward and odd, but I did like it anyway. I think it's a very good film, and what I have to respect is that this was Lulu Wang's story, a very personal story, and I'm very happy that she got to tell it exactly the way she wanted it.